it's Saturday the 24th and it's snowing and I had it, right? I just bring it with me.
How many personalities do you have?
Oh my god. Are we filming now? No. Really?
This right there?
No, I mean the No. Can you send me a copy of this?
Yeah.
For 11 years here at the high school, we've had what's been commonly referred to as two pathways. Kids can come in and take what's referred to as the traditional pathway, or the traditional sequence: Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calc, Calc. And then the other pathway has been the Integrated Math Program, or IMP as it's commonly referred to. And IMP was an attempt to, a while ago, embrace the new math standards. And the emphasis was to not just pursue computational proficiency, but to emphasize as well applied practice, using what one knows mathematically to solve real-world, open-ended, complex, nonlinear problems. So kids had the option to pursue those pathways, and two things happened. One, budget difficulties hit, and so for the better part of 6, 7, 8 years, we were in a reduction mode, and that corresponded with the decline in enrollment, and it made it increasingly difficult to maintain two pathways in a cost-effective way. So we couldn't fill classrooms, couldn't fill class sections with the declining enrollment in the two pathways. The other piece that converged with that was the emergence of the Common Core math standards, which were the latest iteration of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics standards, which had come online in 1989. So they issued a very strong challenge to math teachers at the primary and secondary level. And if I could summarize that, the charge was to ensure that all math instruction was grounded in the standards of mathematical practice, which are a feature of the Common Core math standards. And I encourage everyone, wherever you line up in the debate, to familiarize yourself with the Common Core standards. The website is corestandards.org. So there's two subsections in the Common Core standards. One is content, what kids should know, and the other version is process. How should we go about instructing kids so they're able to access and use what it is that they know in sophisticated and applied ways. So the convergence of the budget and the emergence of the Common Core standards, which in my judgment was kind of a resounding statement from the math community, the professional math community, about what math instruction in the 21st century should look like. So about 3 years ago, we kind of determined that we needed to bring the pathways to an end and find a common pathway grounded in the practice standards. So Jane Moody, our department head, her leadership has been exemplary. She has led the department through a process by which they all became familiar with the process standards, read them, practiced them, did problems related to them, talked about them, really tried to make sure that before we stepped out and tried to think about curriculum and think about instructional practice, that we first grounded ourselves in these bedrock documents. And so over time, that gave way to asking the question of, now that we understand this, what curricula are out there that give best expression to the math standards? And so from over a year, they put themselves in a position in a very disciplined, criterion-driven way to analyze the various math curriculums on the market who profess to provide kids access to the Common Core standards. And just recently, in the latter part of December, we reached the consensus in the department that the curricular program that best captures the spirit of the standards, both in terms of content and process, is the Integrated Math Program. So we made that final presentation to the community just this past Wednesday evening here in the library. And now the work begins to operationalize it, to decide on the course titles, to do the final design of the classes, to invest in professional development so that when this year's ninth graders come to us, we're in a position to make their to kind of meet the expectations of the IMP program. So when I think about what it is that I know about education and what it is the function of what we do and the hope that we have, one kind of conventional way to boil it down, or not conventional, but kind of easy way to summarize the essence of the mission, it is to prepare kids to know what to do when they don't know what to do.
Talk about that.
So, the defining feature of adult life is uncertainty. Like, we don't get a lot of handbooks in terms of how to arrive at solid judgments when faced with complex, poorly defined, non-linear kinds of situations. And mostly that applies in school, out of school, professionally, personally. Right? We're faced with situations where what to do, the path to follow, the judgment to make is not clear. There are competing perspectives, competing demands.
So when you're faced with
when you're faced with uncertainty and ambiguity, that can be overwhelming and it induces shutdown. People default to tradition. They default to the voice and perspective of people in authority. There are lots of ways out. And so I think about one of the goals of education ought to be to make kids progressively more comfortable, progressively more proficient when faced with uncertainty and ambiguity.
So you're giving them a toolbox, in essence.
Right. And so in this instance, we happen to be talking about math. You could take this very same set of interests and ask, so what does the study of history, what does the study of English literature have to contribute? And that's not the only reason we come to school, but well, it's got to be in the top 5 or 10. So when I think about the study of math, one of the traditional critiques is that it doesn't induce, or not induce, doesn't create context within which kids are faced with uncertainty. Right. A lot of the knock historically on math instruction has been that it's rote, that it's algorithm oriented. And I want to be real clear, and I want to walk this tension as carefully as I can. There's nobody here who says that having kids algorithmically proficient or computationally proficient is not important. That kind of automatic ability to do math calculations, right? That's important, and we would aspire to do that. Some of the best teachers I know who taught in IMP or integrated math programs were never shy or apologetic about drilling, and this was in a middle school, kids in their multiplication tables. Right?
It's not a but, it's an and.
It's right. And at the same time, it's also the case that in my judgment, and the judgment of many, a growth area for math is how is it that it positions kids to find themselves in contexts where they can learn to not fold in the face of ambiguity or uncertainty, but to assess situations, tap into what it is that they know, use what they know to speculate about what possible paths of solutions they may go down, and to weather that and to persevere. And if you read the process standards, they use language of perseverance. The language of perseverance appears commonly. So in my judgment, IMP gives us the best shot to walk that line well, to not to apologize at all or surrender at all our interest in making sure the kids are computationally proficient, and simultaneously be equally invested in making sure that kids connect with or placed in situations where they have to develop the skills and habits and dispositions that enable them to become skilled at using what they know to solve real-world problems in an applied way.
So it sounds like what you're talking about is there's a component that adds a certain amount of critical thinking skills that they can use later on?
Yeah, so I think, for professional educators, critical thinking is a really worn phrase. So it's been around forever. What exactly it means varies widely.
I think every phrase we come up with will get worn over time.
Right. And so for me, I get better traction individually around the creating an image of faced with uncertainty and ambiguity, right? Because those are defining features.
Well, here's a real-world scenario. Working within a company in my past life where we were working with engineers who were brilliant, and they came up with all these formulas. They couldn't articulate how they got there. They couldn't repeat it for somebody. They could just solve it, but they couldn't tell you how they solved it. That's a problem for a lot of companies who, where if that person were to leave the company, they're doomed.
Yeah, and so I think of those guys, not that I know them personally, but I would think, so they may have faced a tremendous level of uncertainty and ambiguity in order to synthesize their solution. What I hear in that story is, could we have teachers that could put kids in a position to face a similar degree of uncertainty and ambiguity and scaffold them in a way that enables them both to get to the right answer or the right answers, and at the same time use those experiences to develop the more general transferable capacities to face uncertainty and ambiguity.
And it seems like this is preparing them for that.
So that's the hope. I mean, that's part of the design, right? To kind of walk. In fact, in the language of the presentations we did here, it was the operative phrase is balanced. Can we develop a balanced approach to math instruction that is rock solid on algorithms and computational proficiency, and simultaneously is equally invested in making sure that kids find themselves in context, with support, with structure, with instruction that enables them to develop the skills and habits and dispositions that keep them strong and creative in the face of uncertainty and ambiguity. If we graduate kids like that, given what the challenges that the modern world presents them, I guess is that they'll fare well. One of my dominant feelings is that I have the good fortune of being affiliated with a bunch of really serious math practitioners, right? And Jane's leadership again has been exemplary. We've got exceptional support from the central office, and so one of the things I want to be really clear to is that there was nothing casual, seat of the pants, knee-jerk about this. This was a long, patient investigation, both into the founding documents and the same spirit carried over to the examination of to the curriculum materials, and we reached the point where the evidence was just overwhelming. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to be affiliated with people professionally who take such a serious, disciplined approach to their work, because they clearly got what the stakes were, right? And in my judgment, they were equal to the task. And that makes me feel like we have a chance to do something very significant here, and that makes it exciting to come to work.